talk about consumer behavior, a topic which is of high relevance not just for the producers and the marketers, but in a subtle way it also tells the consumers how and why do they react so in a consumer's market. Now, before I talk about this subject and dwell more into what consumer behavior is and what are the factors which impact consumer behavior, I'm going to take you to three scenarios which are going to talk about how complex this entire subject is that makes it all the more important for us to understand as marketing students that what this consumer behavior concept is all about. The first scenario, which talks about a discussion between a mother and a son, where son is very inquisitive that mother, there's so many brands of washing powders which are available in the market. How do you choose the one which is the best amongst all this lot? Now, the mother's answer to this question is the classic here, where she says that we do not know which is the best one, but whichever advertisement appeals to be the best, I'm the one. I choose that particular washing powder in my daily chores. Now, this is a very classic case of how the consumers actually react in the market, despite the fact that producers, marketers, manufacturers take so much of pain in designing the product, in floating the product into the market, but ultimately it's the advertisement, the appeal of that particular advertisement, which is the catch here for any consumer. The second scenario is referred to as showrooming. Now, in this scenario, what happens? A consumer goes to a showroom, a physical showroom, asks the salesperson to assist him or her into searching an appropriate product for him or her, and then ultimately asked for the Wi-Fi password of that showroom to make this purchase of the same product which they have finalized in an online space. Now, this is very critical for the showrooms because, or the retailers or the manufacturers, for the reason that there's so much of resources which have gone into developing this showroom. There's lighting, there's floor space, there's the salary of the salesperson, but ultimately the consumer is only coming here to finalize the perfect fit for the shoe and then is more interested in buying the same in the online space. The third scenario, where there's a meeting going on in a marketing boardroom and two of the marketing managers are discussing what is going on inside the brain of a brand loyal consumer. The brand under consideration is that of a pickle. Now, to their surprise, the consumer is not at all thinking about their brand. She's thinking everything about my husband, my kids, mom, dad, travel, and everything, but the brand is nowhere in the mindscape of the consumer. Now, that makes it very tricky because when we talk about consumer behavior, when we say that we have understood the consumer very well, and when we talk about brand loyal as a consumer who is always thinking about your brand, then where does this scenario land up into? Okay. Now, therefore, in order to counter these problems, we need to have a thorough understanding of the subject. Let us begin with defining the consumer behavior concept. I'm going to take here two classic definitions into consumer behavior. One given by Schiffman in the year 2007, which says the behavior that consumers display in searching, purchasing, using, evaluating, and disposing of products and services that they expect will satisfy their needs. Now, that's a very comprehensive definition of consumer behavior because it is starting with the process of searching and ending with the process of disposing the particular product and everything that goes into it. Okay, so the entire process talks about how do you go into the market to search for a product, what are the various sources of information from where you collect this particular information that is that's going to assist you in searching the product, then actually making the purchase of the product, which dealer to go to, which day to purchase on, what credit terms to purchase this particular product on, using this product, okay, evaluating whether you have been satisfied, dissatisfied, or status quo is maintained by using that product, and then how you dispose of the product. More so because when you talk about sustainable development goals, the way you dispose of the product, whether it commensurates with uh, uh, my understanding of the environmental factors or not. Okay? The second definition has been given by Angel et al. In the year 1986, which says those acts of individuals that are directly involved in obtaining, using, and disposing of economic goods and services, including the decision process that precede and determine these acts. Now, both these definitions talk about consumer behavior not just as a concept which is relevant at the time when the consumer makes the purchase. It starts much before that. It starts with the consumer search, even identifying that, okay, I have certain need, identifying that need, going to the market, searching for the product, buying that product, using that product, evaluating how has been his experience with the product, and the ultimate disposal of the product. And it does not end there, okay? Because every time you buy a product and you undergo this entire process, you carry an experience with the product with you, and therefore it is a never ending process. This process keeps on building with every subsequent purchase which you are making. To understand it further, we need to talk about, how this COVID has impacted the consumer behavior, because this is going to give you a very beautiful analogy that what consumer used to do before, and situation changes, and how do they reassess their needs, what they need to buy, where they need to buy. So if I talk about the snapshot of change which happened in the consumer behavior post pandemic, immediately post pandemic, the shopping trips were less but more focused, okay? So earlier what we used to do, we would go to a shopping mall and just carry a cart with ourselves, making a carrying a list with us, but making more impulse purchases than those are listed in the that particular list. But this time after COVID, the consumers made more focused purchases. There was less footfall but high conversion. You were going to the malls, you were going to the shopping stores less, but what you were doing, you were purchasing more because you had more focused purchases. The consumers avoided crowded stores. They preferred low exposure contactless shopping and carry own shopping bags. They prefer stores which were hygienic. There was less expenditure on products and more on essential commodities, and more confidence on established brands. So every such situation in the market, it undergoes to it actually redefines how do you see the consumer behavior, how do you assess your consumer with respect to a particular product category. And the pandemic has been a beautiful example into this scenario. So therefore what we need to understand here is, how do we assess who is actually the consumer whom we are to target, when how we are going to study when we are talking about the consumer behavior. Now the next slide is going to depict a scenario, a role play kind of a situation, where there is a conversation between the family to understand what different roles are played in the case of a consumer behavior. Now, this is the scenario. I'll start from here, where mom is saying that we are out of stock with the vegetables and we need to go to the supermarket to buy the vegetables. Now, the husband is saying that it's Sunday today and please let me sleep. Then, mom is saying that the neighbor was saying that you don't need to go outside to buy the vegetables. There is a big basket store, online store, which delivers fresh vegetables to home. And you have easy payment mechanisms, you have easy refund and returns also available. This gives a delight to the father, and he says that okay, then let's order from the big basket only. The vegetables come in, uh, but the wife is asking the husband to pay for those vegetables. And ultimately when the vegetable comes in, it is being cooked, it's the entire family which is talking about how good or how tasty those vegetables have been. Now, if I talk about the scenarios, this entire scenario, and I divide the roles which are played in the process of consumer behavior uh, amongst these family members, this is how it is going to come about. Now, we are going to talk about roles in buying process given by Blackwell, Maynard, and Angel. So the first role is the initiator. The mom initiates the problem. She identifies that there is a need to buy vegetables, we're out of stock. So we call her the initiator. Then there is this Mrs. Sharma, their neighbor, who is influencing mom's decision that okay, we'll not go outside, we'll buy it from Big Basket, because I have had a review from her that this online vendor is pretty good. After influencer, we have this decider, the one who is deciding what is to be done, whether we're going to go out to buy the vegetables or we're going to buy them online. So the decider in this case is the husband, the father of the family. Then we talk about the buyer, the one who actually pays out to buy that particular commodity. Again, the father in this case. And then the next one is the user. The entire family is consuming those cooked vegetables, and we call them the user or the consumer. So these are the various roles played by the consumer in the consumer buying behavior process. However, what is very interesting to know here is, these roles may rest into different individuals for a particular decision making scenario, or they may be played by a single individual depending upon what the context is. Okay, I'm repeating here that these roles may be played by different individuals in a particular decision making scenario, or they can even be played by one single individual. Now, what is important is, we need to understand that when these individuals are, the larger the level of higher the level of involvement in that decision making process, the more are going to be the individuals who are going to play diversified roles in the consumer buying decision process. Now, let's understand what this consumer involvement is all about. The consumer involvement means how aligned, how interested, how important or pertinent for the consumer is that particular consumer buying behavior decision making process. Okay. So if I give you an example or a scenario here that you have to buy a dress for your friend's wedding, that dress is going to be very, very important for you because you have to look the best in your friend's wedding. Okay. Now that means that the level of involvement becomes very high in this case. Now, if I talk about a different scenario where you have to buy a detergent cake, which your mom has asked from the grocery store nearby, in this case, as a young individual, for you, the level of involvement is going to be very less. Whatever your mom has asked you to do, you're going to buy that particular brand in the market without putting in much thought into it. Okay, so that is what is the level of involvement. So if I talk about different levels of involvement, we divide them into three categories: low level of involvement, some level of involvement, and high level of involvement. Low level of involvement. In fact, let me combine these with the determinants of these levels of involvement, because that will help you understand this entire concept very well. So when I talk about determinants, we have these 5 determinants. I'll come back to this a little later after discussing this. Now when I talk about determinants, one of them is the previous experience. How has been your predisposition with the brand that is going to determine your level of involvement? If you have been happy with the brand, okay, you are satisfied with the brand is answering to all your needs very well, then the next time when you want to purchase the same brand, the level of involvement will be a little less, because you know you can trust that brand is fulfilling the promises which it is making, and you don't need to go in for extensive research into the brand. If, on the other hand, you have had a very unpleasant experience with the brand, you will be very cautious in the next purchase which you have to make from this particular brand. So that automatically enhances the level of involvement with the brand. Interest. If you are very highly interested in making that purchase, that interest may arise because there is a peer pressure. That interest may arise because there is a huge budget which is connected with that particular purchase. But if you are very much interested in that particular purchase, that is inevitably going to increase your level of involvement. So the example which I gave about a detergent cake, the level of expenditure which was involved in that detergent cake was very minuscule, and therefore interest was low, and that made the level of involvement low. Okay. Then we talk about the context, that is the situation, the scenario in which you are making the purchase. So if I talk about the situation, you have to buy a greeting card on the birthday of your best friend. Now, this entire scenario talks about high level of interest. It talks about a very, very critical situation because you have to give the best birthday card to your best friend. So therefore, this context, this situation calls in for a high level of involvement. Okay. Similarly, if I talk about the context, which is a routine, behavior, you have to daily, travel to your college, and you need to buy something to wear to the college. That's a routine decision which you are going to make. So therefore, the scenario is a routine decision which you undertake very often, and therefore the level of involvement automatically becomes a little low. Then we talk about the perceived risk of negative consequences. If you perceive that if your buying decision scenario, or the entire buying process which you are undertaking, if you do not undertake it correctly, the negative consequence is going to be very, very, it's going to be very burdensome for you. So if I, let me take to the scenario of the context here. It's the birthday of your best friend, and you have to buy a birthday cake, birthday card for her, and inevitably you buy a birthday card with a wrong message on it. Okay, so what is going to happen? The perceived risk of negative consequences, they increase. Okay, she's not going to talk to you, or probably you are going to have a good fight with each other, and that's going to cost you a lot in terms of your emotional balance, or in terms of mental peace. So therefore, the moment the perceived risk of negative consequences increases, the level of involvement becomes high. Okay. However, if the perceived risk of negative consequences is less, For example, in a scenario where your mom is asking you to buy a detergent cake from the market, you know, if you do not buy that particular brand, whichever is available, you take it back to home. All the, whatever your mother is doing, she is at the most, she is going to yell at you, what have you bought? But the decision will be sorted there. Okay, at least the commodity has come into the market. So in that case, that is called a low level of involvement. Next is your social visibility. If the purchase decision is such that it is going to be visible socially, okay, for example, the clothes which you are buying, they are, they help you connect socially, they help create a social image for you. Okay, so if in those cases where you're buying clothes, the level of involvement increases. Similarly, when you are buying certain item for that's going to represent your social status, there also the level of involvement is going to be high. Okay, so these are the determinants which determine what is going to be the level of involvement. So I'm repeating them here. If you have a good previous experience, you are not interested in a particular commodity, the situation is a routine situation, the perceived risk of negative consequences is low, and the social visibility is also less. In all these scenarios, the level of involvement of the consumer in the buying decision process is going to be low. Okay, so when I talk about low level of involvement, we keep we talk about these five types of consumer buying behaviors. Okay, and that's how we segregate them between low level involvement and high level of involvement. So we have complex decision making scenarios, which talk about those scenarios where you have to collect information from a lot of sources. The reason being that the stakes are very high in terms of the budget which you have allocated to the purchase, in terms of the negative consequences which you are fearing, in terms of your experience with the brand. And in all those scenarios, we call them complex buying behaviors, and they represent high level of involvement. Another scenario, which is a high level involvement situation for the consumer, is a dissonance reducing. Now, dissonance means when you put, we talk about cognitive dissonance as a concept in marketing. Now, cognitive dissonance means every time you purchase a product, you go into self evaluation mode, whether you actually have made a right purchase or not. How many times has it happened to you that you buy a dress for yourself, you go to your college, and then you ask your friends that, you seek confirmation from your friends that yes, you are looking very smart in that dress. That is referred to as cognitive dissonance, some kind of dissatisfaction which is there in your mind because you've already made the purchase after making all these, after checking all the steps. So you have searched it very good, very, meticulously. You bought it from the best dealer, but despite that, there is this, mental block which keeps on coming to you whether I've made the appropriate purchase or not. So if your purchase involves that kind of dissonance, we talk about it as a high level of involvement decisions. Now, the reason being, dissonance arises in all those scenarios in which the context is very, very important, in which you are highly interested in the product, those scenarios where social visibility is high. So, therefore, inevitably, the level of involvement also increases. Those decision making scenarios which commensurate low level of involvement are variety seeking buying decisions. Now, variety seeking is where the consumer inevitably looks for newer brands every now and then. So you buy a particular brand of shampoo, but you are interested in new brands also. So you want to try out a new brand every now and then. Now, in this case, we talk about a low level of involvement because the consumer is very meticulous that, okay, next time I want to buy something, some different brand, I want to try out every other brand which is there in the market. Okay. Then there is habitual buying behavior. Habitual, for example, if I talk about these generic brands, Tata Salt, Maggi noodles. Now these are the brands which we are in the habit of buying them. Okay, or over and over. It has been ages that these brands have been household name with a lot of Indian households. So in such kind of habitual buying behaviors also, the level of involvement is low because next time I don't have to think about which brand of salt to buy. I know we have been buying Tata salt, we have been happy with that salt. So all I have to go is go out into the market and buy that particular brand. Okay. Now, apart from that, there is another buying behavior which is called impulse buying. The impulse buying is I do not have a designated or predefined need for a product. But when I go to to a showroom, when I even if I'm buying in an online or a virtual space, I end up buying certain things which I do not need immediately, or maybe in the future. Okay, so you simply you're shopping. You must have seen that when you are going to a mall, or when you're shopping online. Uh, Towards the end of the purchase, you just there's certain suggestions which are recommendations which are made to you, and you end up buying them. Yeah, they may be used in the future. Okay, so that kind of purchase is impulse buying, because which is not backed by your immediate need, but your immediate liking for that particular product somehow, because that was very attractive in terms of price, in terms of the the entire design of the product, or maybe you wanted to buy it for some future use. Okay, that's called impulse buying behavior. So we have these five types of buying behaviors which commensurate with the different levels of involvement. And in each of these situations, the consumers are going to play different roles at different points of time. So if I talk about a habitual buying behavior, for example, in case of a pen, if you have to buy a writing pen for yourself, for you want to take notes in the college, and it's a routine purchase which you have to make. You are not going to involve your mom, dad, and anybody else to decide what brand of pen to buy for yourself. All you have to do is, okay, the refill is not the refill has expired and I need to buy a new pen for myself. This is the one which I have been using. I go out in the market and buy it. So in this case, the initiator, the influencer, the decider, the user, the buyer, all is one single individual. That's what I said. In case of low level involvement decisions, all these roles may rest in one single individual. But if I talk about these high level involvement decisions, for example, a dissonance reducing decision or a complex decision, where you have to, let us say, you have to buy a house. You just cannot get up overnight and go out into the market and buy a house. A lot of research goes into this. So there is somebody who has to initiate a problem that, okay, we are in a need to buy a bigger house. Okay, somebody to influence, maybe an advertisement, or maybe an independent entity who maybe manipulates your decision, that, okay, this is the best property to buy in for. Somebody who has to decide, maybe the head of the family, somebody who has to pay, and then the user is the entire family. So in this case, these roles may rest with different individuals here. Okay, so this is what is all about the types of buying behavior. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the section.